right, so I'm Joshua Finn from J&H Aerospace, and we are here with somebody that a few of you will recognize, hopefully a lot of you. What's your name,
I am Lee Robert Hines.
and what are you famous for?
Ah, boy, I've had a couple of 15 minutes of fame. Um, I have been a slot car racer and I've been uh, doing other things, but mainly I have done flying free flight gliders and electric models since 1952 in competition. I have over, I've lost count. I quit counting on my log at 700 contests. Anyway, I've won the nationals and a couple other things and held some records this and there and designed an airplane called the Sweepette, which people around the world know me by. That you know, it's my email address, Sweepette Lee. So there.
So, what outside of free flight, and slot car racing, what kind of career did you have? Any things of that nature?
Well, I started out as an apprentice draftsman and worked my way up to being a designer and a quality control person. And about the time that '99 came, I decided that I was going to retire because people quit hiring people of my age. I was made redundant, as my British friends said. So in any case, since then I've just said, well, let's just travel around and fly a lot. And I like to travel, going to various places and seeing various things. And the T-shirt I have on is World War One, the Liberty Museum in Kansas City, Missouri, which is I recommend it highly to those that like to wander around museums. It's a terrific place. Um, like what's the what's the one in Dayton?
Oh, the National Museum of the Air Force.
Yes, but what's the site name?
That's well, it's the Dayton Air Museum is what a lot of people call it.
I know, but it's
Huffman Prairie.
Huffman Prairie, Wright Patterson. That's what I call
That's
it.
right. That's yeah.
Wright Patterson. Yeah,
It's
I
at the
was there.
Wright
I was there
Patterson Air
once.
Force Base.
Yeah, yeah, and that was a good time too. But in any case, I like to travel around, and I've gone to the nationals. Well, I lost track of the number of times I've been to nationals. From 1955, I went several times in the 50s and 60s, and then I've gone to several of them recently too. And they're good fun, and there's a lot of people there that I know and have known like forever, more or less. And I got to celebrate Bud Romack's birthday dinner at along with the rest of the people at the national the banquet that they hold every year. They consider him a special friend also. Anyway, what else? I'm going to a contest for a week coming up at Lost Hills, and there'll be people from all over. I know that there's already people there from, at least I think, are on the way from Australia and whatnot. And you have a neat kid. I like Caleb. He's a buddy. You are. I was waiting for the smile. Thank you, Caleb. Anyway, well, what else have I done? Well, I loved basketball a little bit, but I hurt myself in baseball. I've been a baseball fan since 1947 when Jackie Robinson came up from the black baseball leagues, and so I've been a Brooklyn Dodger and Los Angeles Dodger fan ever since. that's about it, I think.
Okay.
Not
So, in your indoor hand launched flying, because that was kind of where the Sweepette started, um, what were the kind of the firsts that you got once you got going with indoor hand launch? You were the first person to break.
yeah, at the 57 Nationals, I did over a minute 17 twice on 2 flights, and that was a world record at the time, quote unquote, recognized as the world record.
Right.
And then a few years later, in 63, I think, or 64, um, I went to Edwards Air Force Base and caught a sunspot lift and did over a minute 20. Um, that was such a fun thing to do. I mean, the plane's gliding along and it rises 3 feet on one side of the glide circle and comes around and sinks. And so I did several flights of improved time, but I did a minute 22 something, a minute 22 and a half, I think.
What ceiling height?
Oh, with 90 feet, yeah. And the airplane weighed like 15 grams, and could get. I was fortunate. I made the right weight airplane
Mm-hmm.
for that ceiling. I had some little experience flying in a place that was 75 foot, and what was that at? I think it was the 63 Nationals. I think did, I'm not sure. Did I win that? Oh, okay. That was. I technically won it because there was another time that was put in, which was illegal, because the people who read the score on the watch mistook a 30-second sweep watch for a minute sweep watch. So a 32-second flight actually became a minute 2, and they couldn't find the guy to verify that. But none of his other flights were over 32 or 3 seconds, you know, and he was gone. So I ended up second, but you know, I technically, I think I won that. I think that was 60. No, it wasn't 63. I forget.
There's a trophy in there with
Yeah,
1963, so I think you've got that
but
one
63
secure.
in 63 I won it, along with Bobby DeShields won the junior doing a minute 10. I was so happy for him in that regard. That was good. And then
Remind us what plane he was flying?
He was flying a Sweepette right off my plan, yeah. And then I won the 1967 Nationals with the same airplane.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it was the same airplane. Um, the reason I had to use the same airplane was because I didn't have any more of the old sanding sealer, and I'm using another sanding sealer, which turned out, if you hit anything, it would just crack. It was really brittle. So I had to use the old plane, which was not brittle. It was good. That was okay. It did. I think it did a minute 18 or something like that, and won it. And then later on, after the contest was over, we flew until 10 o'clock at night. And the official flying, I think, quit at 8 or something like that. And so most of us just kept on flying because they weren't shutting the lights off till later. Right? And
why leave if you can still fly?
yeah, right. And so I think I did a minute 18 because the air gets better indoors as the heat comes out of the asphalt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In the middle of the day, it's not as good. You actually put up my winning flight just as it was beginning to cool off, and it was getting better, but it got 2 or 3 seconds better later. But that's the way it goes with indoor and outdoor. In fact, I know that. But in any case, that was that was 67, and then in 77, yeah, um, the Nationals in California here at March Air Force Base was the base Nationals, and we flew at a hangar um, in another air base, I think in Redlands, and it was 90 feet, and I came second there to Bill Blanchard, who was one of the best handless flyers I've ever flown against. Outdoor was generally his specialty. It was, and he never got dirty. It was always, he'd end up a white T-shirt and pants or something, or shorts. I mean, as the day was flown over, excellent flyer. Not only could he throw high, but he was very accurate. He'd been a baseball pitcher most of his life, um, and I've always admired him from the standpoint that his longevity. I think he could probably still throw, and only he's probably in his 70s now, maybe. I ought to call him.
Yeah.
I saw him the other day. He might be up there at the contest this weekend, in fact, or next weekend. So in any case, what else can I tell you? That's
If somebody is taking up hand launch, well, gliders in general, free flight gliders, what's the number one thing you would want them to know?
interesting. Number one thing we want them to know. Learn learn how to throw a baseball, and be sure to follow through properly. And if you're flying hand launch, like a baseball pitcher from center field or player throwing from center field, take a few steps in, and when you release, be sure you keep on running and follow through well with your body, with your arm and body. Follow through is much more important than people think, because your brain is going to tell you to stop, and your body needs to keep on going, and it's all wrapped up in the kinesiology of the system. Pardon me. Until I found that out, I was hurting my arm. Um, but after I hurt my arm, several months before my shoulder was feeling good. But during that time, I made smaller gliders or lighter gliders, and I would take a longer run and then kind of bring my arm through and let it kind of fall to the ground, or not to the ground, but fall down. And I learned how to use momentum during that time, even though later on I didn't realize it was, what it was called. But you have to get the momentum going, and then release it, but don't let your arm don't just stop your arm, because you've killed the momentum factor at that point. And when I got so that I was strong again, the rotator cuff was back working, I could throw 50% higher than before. It was just an amazing, what's the term, a sea change in my ability.
But what's the highest you've ever thrown?
Do you know Dick Mathis?
I know of him.
He told me that he was there at Willow Grove the day that I did the minute 17, and he said that the people there were telling him that no one had ever thrown as high as I did, and that I was throwing over 140 feet high. Well, that amazed me, when I found out about that, and and I've gone to Santa Ana, and somebody had one of those.
So we are in the shop where the cool things have originated. So how many years have you been working out of this shop?
Oh, 1975 or six. I forget when I came. Something like that.
Nice.
Something like 75 or six. I built. See the airplane I'm holding there? That's
There are
called
a few
Mean
well-known people here.
That's called Mean Machine that I'm holding on the yellow and with the black outlines and the red. That was the Rainy Nationals, not Nationals, the Rainy Finals at Taft, California in 1978, and that was the best contest I've ever flown in. It was tough and hard. I mean, 3 days long, 6 flights per day, from 15 minutes after sunrise until 6 o'clock at night, 3 days in a row. And the gentleman on the left is Bob Isaacson, and the one next to me is Jim Wilson, and that's our team. And Isaacson was one of the best flyers and competitors I've ever known. I mean, you didn't want to talk to him during a competition day. He would not answer, period. Yeah. And but so he and I and Wilson finished on top, and the rest of the guys is a power team. Doug Galbraith, Roger Simpson. Oh my God. The next guy, I don't remember his name exactly. It is Walt Gio and Bob Pastorcio and Bob White as you go across to the right. Um, who did I say the last person was?
I'll have to go back and look.
Bob White is on the right, yeah. And so I think some of us are not here anymore. Some of those people are not with us anymore. But um, Bob Isaacson was a great friend, and in fact, the competition next weekend is called the Isaacson.
Isaacson Winter Classic.
Yeah, the Isaacson Winter Classic, or simply known as the Ike.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I miss him a lot. He was a great friend and champion. Oh, I wonder. Okay, so Bob White is in that one, and that's the '84 finals in Seguin, Texas. And Bob White made that team also. He was always making the team. He was just super. Um, and he did well at the World Champs too. And he finally won it in 1987.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't there during that World Championships. I had some recent financial changes that I needed to deal with, new jobs and this and that. I couldn't get the time off, or didn't want to take the time off. And so I got a phone call from my good buddy Mike Phantom from France, and he's saying, hello. He says, Lee, I don't have many of these coins, but here's the thing. So and so person won, and Bob White won Wakefield, and I screamed, and then I think that was the end of his money, so the phone went dead. But I found out that Bob White had won Wakefield, and that was a very exciting, happy time. We drank some wine after that when he got home. Yeah. In any case, that's a good thing. So these are my team pictures from '84 and from '78, and I don't know what else to show you here. I mean, I got all sorts of stuff kicking around, and
E36s.
Yeah.
Nice E36s, one with out of production motor, at least one.
Yeah. One of them is a Texas timer set up for electric, electric, I think. Oh no, I think I lost that plane. Yeah, I had on my Facebook page there's a picture of me holding an airplane.
Hmm.
That plane was lost over the hills in Paris when I stupidly didn't put my tracker in, and I didn't have my. Um, I was just not alive that day. I was, and the plane disappeared over the mountains after about 10 minutes. And the RDT, I didn't have it plugged in. So when you don't have it,
Ouch.
I mean, I needed somebody else to put my planes together that day because I was not awake. Man.
Next, there we go. Next question.
Okay.
So, why should somebody take up hand launched gliders? Free flight hand launch.
Um, well, it's been the most satisfying pastime, shall we say, to be able to feel that this device that you've built to try to make it um, surpass or to live up to its best potential, to be able to perform up to its best potential, um, using everything that you know or are learning still about the whole ramification of its surroundings. You become a meteorologist after you have done the building and then um, putting the finish on. You have to learn what not to put on the plane because some finishes are bad, not going to work right, and others are good. So in any case, I just found it to be a very satisfying thing to do. And when you finally achieve your don't open that up. I don't think you can. Yeah, I'm kidding him. Um, but it's just really a highly um, edifying moment when you've actually achieved your goal or exceeded the goal that you think you had set. When you exceed the goal, you go, "Oh my God! Did I know that I could do that?" I think the answer is no. You didn't know until you did it. Period.
All right. So here's the question to make you go cross-eyed because you've been around hand launch forever. So who are your top five hand launch glider flyers of all time?
In the USA or international?
Period. Top
Top
five.
five.
Top five hand launch glider flyers of all time.
Not based necessarily on time, but what they knew and what they taught me, or somewhat
Just
what
the
they
best,
knew.
however you want to call it.
Okay. Bill Blanchard was excellent, and you could hardly beat him outdoors. And the only couple times I think I only flew against him indoors a couple times, and I won the nationals at 57. I'm pretty sure when he flew, and then placed second to him in 77, um, which is the last time I ever flew in a high ceiling nationals. Um, and well, that wasn't high ceiling, not 77. That was only 90 feet um, with the wires hanging down for the lights. Um, okay, Bill Blanchard, Joe Foster taught me a tremendous amount of things to do, how to work with hand launch.
And Joe
And
was your mentor, right?
yes, yeah, at 56 state meet, he showed me this and that and the other and how to put finish on, and I even still have some tester sanding sealer there, which was the magic sanding sealer at the time, um, and it still works. So, who else? Hand launch. Huh, that's hard to tell. Um, I'm sure there's a lot of guys that I really didn't know or get to fly much with, you know. Um,
Where's
well,
Stan? Does Stan fall on the list?
Stan, as far as current hand launch flying, yeah, he's about the best. With it's a tip launch situation, and I don't recall that much of him flying javelin style. Um, I know he did it and he was good at it, but I can't really equate it. Um, so I'd have to say he's got to be in the top five, um, regardless. Who else?
We're probably leaving Ron Whitman off the list, but
No, I've got to include Ron. I mean, he and I fought it out quite a lot, um, and because he won two nationals in I think 60 and 61, and I think that's about it. I showed him how to fly tip launch on the way back from the NAS one time, and because he didn't have any tip launch hand launches, um, but he began to find some guys. He lives in Utah
okay.
now. Um,
He was the only person ever to break 90 seconds indoors, right?
who was the first person to do it? No,
Javelin style.
javelin style. Well, yes, javelin style. Except you have to count Dick Peterson, but he still holds the all-time record for hand launch official time.
Okay.
This is a special trick um, trivia question. Who holds the all-time record for hand launch glider official flights and record? And it's Dick Peterson. He did like 2 minutes and 20 some seconds
Slight hat trick.
on a skylit area at the Exposition Armory near an Exposition Park, in Exposition Park, next to the Coliseum in L.A. And that place, I flew a lot in there with gliders like this, but there were 8 grams or so. Yeah, Peterson flew over the sunspots, and the airplane would do little soap bubble tricks, you know. Yeah, but it was not illegal, and basically we did that back in, I want to say the very early 60s, like
Yeah.
61 or so, because the AMA wouldn't make a rules change to outlaw microfilm gliders. Peterson's was actually a microfilm covered glider, and a couple of other people did that, but he had the best time. I think um, Dick's brother Chris made one too, and he beat my senior hand launch record, which was a minute 18 or something, and he'd only did a minute 19. We're saying, Chris, you got to do better. You got to break it by more than that. We wanted to really show the AMA that, you know, they need to do something about this. And so we made a proposal um, to do. Well, one of the proposals was to add a minimum weight of a gram, and you couldn't have flown a microfilm glider at that weight, you know, and done any good, I don't think. Well, maybe if it was big enough.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you made it big enough, but then the thermal hunting gets a little harder.
I think we actually were going to put a 2 or so gram limit on the minimum weight, and also we went to multiple flights. The best, I think the initial proposal was the best 3 flights out of 9.
Okay.
And it got modified to the best 2 flights for some reason. You know, I'd rather it stayed at the best flight because basically the rules makers were kind of mealy mouth wimps because they didn't like our 3 out of 9, and we had 2 out of 9. So why don't you just leave it alone?
Yeah.
You know, it's been the best flight forever. You know, actually the Vartanian, you know, was I think it was B glider. They had different classes,
Yeah, A,
and
B, C.
yeah, and he did like 55 seconds or something back in the 30s. Awful good time. It's a good glider. I spoke with him once, and it was kind of an interesting thing. I think he lived on the West Coast by that time, and I said, "Can you recall any of this activity?" And he said, "Yeah, okay." So he told me some things about it. And I said, "Well, we've been flying copies of your airplane with flat bottom airfoils." He goes, "Yeah, I made a couple like that too." I said, "Why is that?" Because, well, shaping the airfoil like I did in the plan was too difficult. It was upsweep and under camber, and you know, the simplex on top was
Still easier than Mitsuru Ishii's airfoils.
with.
Mitsuru Ishii from Japan.
Oh,
He does an actual LDA airfoil on his.
yeah,
I actually held one once. It's insane. It was model of the year last year.
Ishii's
Mhm.
recent.
Yeah. Cap 2 world record.
Oh, he
A
doing that.
minute.
He's doing that. How big was it?
About 23, 24 inches, I think.
But
I'd have to. It's in the
I
Simpo.
thought, well, I didn't get it. I didn't buy the
Okay.
Sempo anymore. I gave that up as a too much on the shelf. You want some old ones? I got in there, box of them. Um,
Might
and,
take you up on that sometime.
yeah. Anyway, I thought he was handicapped.
No, that's Aki.
Oh, that's Aki.
Ishii used to fly Aki's planes, and now
Oh,
Ishii builds his own, and so
that's
he was the first person to break 140 in Cat 4, and then
yeah,
Stan and Buxton took him over.
yeah. But
But Ishii doesn't have access to sights as high as what we've got here.
that building was pretty good because you could fly big circles, if I
Yes,
recall.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, his airplane's like 45-inch wingspan. The one for the Cat 4 site.
Uh-huh.
It's huge.
You fly at tip launch?
It's the only way you can
Yeah,
something
right.
that size.
Right. Well, that's what I thought, but I had to ask the question because I wasn't there. I didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah, there are videos of it online.
He's a good guy, yeah.
All right.
This actually is the first catapult that I built. And that's a Sweepette. I think it's a Sweepette 18. It's been damaged. And
It still looks better than any of mine.
I was going to. Well, I think it got eaten by some animals when I lost it, and
Yep.
broke the fuselage. So I've got another fuselage that I could build from there. And this is. I'm pretty sure this is either the first or second catapult I built. Well, I guess there's no record of a date, but it'll be 99.
So, for the sake of viewers, tell us about this.
Oh,
right
that's a Stan does that. That's his viscous putty DT timer. That you hook the spring and you wrap it around, and you know, you keep your finger on the. Could go like this when you're flying it. Keep your finger on it so it doesn't move, because hopefully you have it preset. And I had a lot of trouble with that type of timer, with a lot of premature DTs or DTs that seem to go on forever, and oh my God, there goes the airplane and it hasn't DT'd yet, you know. So in any case, that made life difficult. But that's the way free flight is at times, you know. But I won my first. The weird thing was I won the first catapult contest that I ever flew, which was the Nationals in '99. And
I find it so hard to believe that you would win a contest.
well, I tell you, it was a really tough contest. It was the Nationals, and it was one of the best days you'd ever see at the Nationals at Muncie. Um, have you been to Muncie?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm afraid I don't know that properly.
I've only been there. Well, I've only flown there once.
Okay.
So.
Well, it's not necessarily my favorite place to fly, shall we say?
Some people share your opinion.
Yes, there are people sharing that opinion. That's true, but it was an excellent day, and a bunch of us were making a lot of maxes. It turned out that at the end there was like at least a half a dozen that had made three maxes, and we're going for more. And I think I finally won it with a little less than a max on the I think the third fly-out flight, you know. And Martin Cowley, who you know that name,
Mm-hmm.
Martin was one of my dear friends, and in fact we might have. I think we flew together to Cincinnati or something, and then rented a car and drove up there to Muncie. They're not far from there, and he was there, and I flew, and he was an excellent flyer. He was one of the most dogged, you can't give up competitors, you know, that I've ever flown against. And so anyway, I actually ended up winning that. The funny thing about that national, that was the only good day at the nationals. The rest of them, in fact, Handless Glider Day, there was one max um, all day long. Yeah.
Ouch.
And a guy that I've become friends with won that with that one max, and he had a hand launch that he flew right.
I've done that.
It must have had some funny twists because I'm pretty sure I'm right. That was the one that he won. What's his name? Oh my God, forgotten his name. Never mind.
There's a list of the winners somewhere that was posted
Yeah.
recently, and I can't remember where it is either.
Right,
So.
right, yeah. So in any case, there's, I guess you might say there's a lot of history in this room.
There is.
Yeah.
There's a plane up there that looks interesting.
Second place in the Nationals, 1977.
Do you mind if I get it down?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh wow. That is really light
The
and
Sweepette
really
20
pretty.
with the lightest wood I've ever had. It was I forget, like 3.7 pounds stock. And so that's why it's broken. You see, the thing about that Nationals, it was in 1977 and it was over. Hello, we can turn lights on. That might
That's true.
give some help.
I'm just looking at your under camber and all that. That is far beyond my skills.
It's probably warped. Because that was 1977. And the thing was, I was told that the max ceiling height was 70 feet. That wasn't true. Turns out that's where the 20-foot long cords to the lights, there was all sorts of lights hanging down to 70 feet. And it was really 90 feet. And if you were lucky and careful, and maybe more lucky than careful, you could throw the plane up high and have it circle down and miss the light standards on the way down. And Bill Blanchard, who was one of the greatest handless flyers I've ever met and known, he won that. with a plane very much like that on it. I think he had a Sweepette 18, and he flew at the right time of day. Um, Before it got so hot that it got dead and actually was almost down air later on. And I guess I was really fortunate to end up getting second place with a plane that was built too light for that ceiling. Okay, and I mean even the fuselage wood was light.
Yeah, I'm feeling that, and I'm like that. I'd be scared of that. I'd be so
Well,
scared of
yeah,
that.
I mean, I basically had a couple of different ways to throw. I mean, one of them was get my body going to get the momentum going and kind of drag my arm through the air without any wrist snap. Do you see the damage in the wings? That's when I snap my wrist.
So that's from the wing splitting right here. Is from that.
From rearing back and throwing the hell out of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I had a couple flights left, and I said, well, I've got like second place.
So here's the question I have, because
Okay.
I'm a right-handed thrower. You're right-handed thrower as well?
Yes.
All right, so I always put my finger grip on this side, so I would cross my finger over here.
That's fine.
What is the advantage to putting it on the left side?
The force is in a direct line to your thumb.
Okay.
Okay. When it's over there, the force is at an angle.
Okay. So if you have a light fuselage, I'm assuming that means that this would basically tend to snap your tail.
Um, no, I did it like that all the time. But
No, I'm saying if you had it over on this side.
yeah, if you have it on that side, there are people who can't throw with it on the left. Kurt Stevens, for one.
Yeah, I have had a lot of trouble throwing with it on the left side.
Then don't do it. It's not possible for you to do. It's a physiological physiometric thing or whatever.
Or maybe it's that I learned it wrong.
No, I think it has to do with the way your hand and arm works.
Okay.
Because I generally would throw and pretty much follow through straight forward and off to my left hip.
Okay.
Okay. Kurt Stevens, he'd throw my gliders a couple times. 5 feet out of his hand, it'd be on its back.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've experienced that, well, then it's not for you to throw with the.
I have definitely had that. I have definitely had them flip over when I've tried throwing from that side. But
so, anyway, that's.
now, did you put sandpaper here?
Oh yeah.
Interesting.
And I generally put sandpaper up in the front too, you know. Okay, those are catapults, not hand launches. See, I've gotten rid of all my hand launches except this one, pretty much.
I see a tip launch tail hanging out up there too.
Oh yeah, that's a stab that Stan made for me with foam and carbon fiber.
Okay, we got to take a look at this.
He was doing that, and I said, "Hey, you trying to make me one?" See, my era of flying.
Composite tails.
Yeah, flying catapult. I mean, flying tip launch began around 2006 because Stan and Dick Peterson and saw this guy flying RC tip launch.
Mm-hmm.
He was an elderly man from Washington State who basically started the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And so Stan and Dick and I said, well, why don't we try that, you know? So I had pretty good luck with this plane, but the thing was, when it crashes with a hole in the fuselage where you have the pop-up situation,
bad things happen.
yeah, it'll break there. Yeah. So that's what happened to the fuselage on this one too, because that was a pivot point.
Mm-hmm.
You see. But I could make another fuselage for this and do it, and probably just glue the wing down and say goodbye if it hits a thermal. You know, make. And behind you, I've got some goodbye airplanes. You know, and on the table there inside that sack. Um,
All bagged up.
those are bagged up, ready to take to the Isaacson slash Fab week contest, which starts the 7th.
Okay.
I'll be leaving the 7th until the 16th. I'm coming back from Lost Hills. But yeah, oh, I think in here, I think there's some 12-inch gliders.
There's a wing for one right here.
Yeah, that was an indoor job. That I think I made that for Westbaden.
Back when you could fly indoor gliders in West
Yeah,
Baden.
right. And you know, it's just put the wing on the fuselage, and you can move it back and forth to get an optimum, you know, optimum situation.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see here. What's it say? 7:05. Okay, yeah, right. Uh, Stan and I were going to the Nationals in '05,
Okay.
and we were going to Westbaden. There was a big indoor contest there.
Mm-hmm.
That was before it was restored.
Right.
Yeah, you knew that. Okay. So anyway, this was a little plane that I made, and I had another one that stayed up in the girders there, and that one broke and came down. So I said, well, maybe in some other time I'll make a wing. I guess the parts of it are still there, aren't they?
Yeah, so you've got, well, we've got several fuselages here.
Yeah.
You've got what is this, a 5-ply? Because you've got wood on the outside, you've got
Yeah.
carbon and wood on the inside.
Yeah, we're playing around with the cover. So the balsa on the outside is so that you sanded it, it wouldn't get black all over.
Okay. Nice.
It came out reasonably well, but boy, I mean, you're not making them. As I one time told Stan, I says, we make airplanes that fly. We don't make them to live forever. You know, we don't make them to withstand crashes. That's not the name of the game.
I've got a little hat trick to show you that is gonna make that an interesting thought.
Okay, great. I think in here are 12-inch catapults.
Oh, in here.
Which
is this the Redmo in here?
Yeah, right. Take it down and open it up.
I've heard so much about the Redmo.
Really?
I've never seen it in person.
Yeah, that plane dates back a while. It was made for the first. Excuse me. What was it?
Beat the Vart.
Yeah, beat the Vart at the Nats, and also we do it next week at the Isaacson.
What you're telling me is I've got to join in the fun at some point.
Do what?
What you're saying is I've got to join in the fun at some point.
Oh yeah, that's right. So, where's it? Okay.
Yeah.
I have another one that might have not that one.
That's an actual Vart.
That's an actual Vartanian. In fact, that's the glider that. Well, the funny thing was, I'm over at Stan's one day because I used to go up to his place once or twice a week. He used to live with his folks and take care of his mother, and they're about 12 or so miles away in Westminster or Orange, I forget which. It was like on the border. Anyway, I go up there and we're working in his garage, and I get there one day and he's cutting out um, wings and fuselages out of a set of plywood. Um, uh, what do you call it? Plywood templates. And I said, "Hey, what's that? I don't recognize it." And he says, "That's a Vartanian." I said, "Never heard of it." I mean, I'm talking about in the 90s, and or maybe right around 2000 or so. So he says, "Yeah, you never heard of Vartanian?" I said, "No, I hadn't." He said, "Well, there's a magazine article right there." He had it spread out, and he was making a half a dozen or more, maybe 10 kits worth, so to speak, uh, because people would ask him about such and such a deal, and he'd make kits up for him, and so he said, "Here, have a set of parts." so so I started working on it. Well, he's just prolific. I mean, he'll just crank out a plane and like nothing flat. It seems like. Well, that was on a Thursday, so I worked on it at his place and then took it home and finished it because on the weekend we went down to Otay Mesa because the San Diego Orbiteers were going to have a monthly contest there. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't a bad place to fly except for one thing. It was right next to the fence to the Mexican border. And I think each of us had a plane that went over the fence. Bye-bye, birdie. So anyway, we're flying there, and I had mine, and he had his, and so we got there about 7:30 or 8, and pulled it out, and he flew his and I flew mine, and after some minor adjustment, like a little more down elevator, a little bit of left rudder, a little bit of nose weight, I threw it on its second flight. It did like a minute 20. I'm going, huh? What the heck did those Chicago aeronauts know in 1939 that we don't know yet, hardly, you know? And so it was a pretty amazing revelation to see how well that flew. The thing was, it was one of the few planes from that era that didn't have too big a rudder. It had enough dihedral, and it had, and I built that just dead stock, you know, except for the grip in the front, the hook in the front, and the grip in the back. And I go, wow, you know, this is kind of an amazing thing.
So the question is, did you change the airfoil?
No.
So it was with the original airfoil.
Well, okay, I think there was two different airfoils. I think
okay.
I think he did. Thanks for mentioning that. I'd forgotten. We just did the flat bottom airfoil, and I think Vartanian, if you look at his airfoil, and some of them at that time, it seemed like the Chicago guys liked what we'd now call an LDA airfoil. I mean, upsweep in the front, and undercamber in the back, and you know, and kind of a gentle curve. What do you call it? The top, like a simplex curve on top. So we just made the flat-bottomed system with those, and they flew quite well. I mean, I think at one of the Vartanians, one of the actual stock Vartanians placed pretty well. You know, did pretty well with it. Well, of course, you're outside and you're getting some thermals. Chuck Powell, you know that name? Okay. Chuck likes to fly him too, and he's just a real good old boy. He was out at, just got pictures of him at Eloy at the Southwest Regional. So, any case, that's about it for that. It was a really good little plane. Oh, and what I did for the Beach Vartanian contest, I actually had another one which I think I lost. It was all red, and I made one flight with each, and used the average of those two flights
Oh yeah.
as the bogey time, and I think it was around a minute five. Um, so then I said, okay, anybody that beats a minute five gets to go into the next heat.
Okay.
We flew them as heats, mass launch system, and first one down is out, and then the last one up is goes to the next. But um, usually the top, if there was five or six in that heat, the top three would go on to the next heat. So that worked out, and still you'd get it over with pretty darn quick like that.
Mhm.
I want you to pick up the airplanes and get that model aviation that's underneath it.
Okay.
They're prepared for me to show something to you.
Okay. That's back when model aviation had a really cool cover too.
Yeah, page 34 to 35 and 68, Sweepette 6
Yes.
and other things. Let me get to there. Yeah, this was not a bad issue. Oh, Paul Harvey. Do you know the name Paul Harvey?
Yeah, I kind of recognize that name.
He had a radio show, and he was an excellent fellow. Hang on a second while I fumble through to the right page. Here we are.
I believe it's Bob Muser's article.
Yeah, right. Muser was a great calligrapher.
Yes.
So he took my drawing and traced it and did this little one.
Best flight of 23 seconds under a 17-foot ceiling, which is way better than I'll ever do.
Well, it was way better than I had ever done until I. Do you know how I got to making this shape?
I do not.
I was at home, and we were getting ready to go to the Inglewood Flight Masters Club meeting. And we would go to the club meeting, and then afterwards we'd fly in the gym. And it was like kind of, you call that pent roof, so to speak, where there were girders, and you couldn't really get up more than 17 feet, or you're going to hit the girders. So I had a couple of these parts cut out, and my mother called me to dinner, and so I went to dinner and came back, and I looked at the parts, and from the other side. So instead of this being the leading edge, this became the leading edge. And from then on, that's how Sweepette started. I started making all my Sweepettes based on this 6-inch glider, and then I'd scaled them up to 9 and 12 and 14 and 16 and 18, etc. Fly them in various gyms and indoor sites. So we had several indoor sites around here in those days, which not much of that's going on now.
We're working on fixing that.
Well, yeah, but like you say, you've got a couple of minions who are possibly develop into better chances to perpetuate the breed, so to speak, of flyers. And but we had quite a few flyers then. I mean, we'd have a packed gymnasium. The Wilmington Recreation Hall was 29 feet 11 inches.
Nice.
So we made these little gliders and little rubber jobs, and rubber jobs flew at that end. We flew at this end where the stage was, and it was good. I mean, heck, I did 37 seconds in that ceiling one time. I got a little lift, went over the crowd, and I could see there was a bit of warmth on the over the people's heads, and and sometimes they get a little the rubber jobs. Um, they had to equalize the number of people on each side. Otherwise, they'd drift into the opposite side. You know, and it was fun. We had, I think we did it like so much money per flight we paid to fly in the event, you know, and then
Okay.
the winner would take all, and then we go to a burger place and have some stuff to eat and drink, you know. But, that was really good fun, really great times, yeah. Uh, Norm Fertani's dad, Chuck, and I and others were looking for flying sites back in the late 50s. And I worked down in Wilmington, and they were asking all of us if we see a site that we could potentially fly. Well, there was the Wilmington Recreation Center had this ceiling that was pretty good, you know. So we started flying there, and um, Chuck had a hobby shop too, and he was getting some pretty good wood back in the 50s and early 60s, and so we were all just having a good old time. You know, it was up. I think it was up in Gardena. That's where the Furtanis lived. It's what's a Japanese um, Nisei, right? The second generation
Okay.
Japanese contingent. Lots of Japanese. If you want some good Japanese food, you went to Inglewood. I mean, what did I say? Not Inglewood, not Compton. What did I say? It's a city.
I can't remember.
Oh,
I'm
shoot.
trying to keep up
Anyway,
myself.
um, and I think they still live there. Norm and Ginny, good people. And I'm so sorry that.
Norm's probably gonna be there on Friday.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. And I'm sorry that he's not running the Isaacson,
Hmm.
which is again Sunday starting on the 8th and 9th, and so uh, that's a contest that well, it starts out the biggest week of flying in the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
So, question on the Sweepette, you were originally flying with that going forward.
Yeah, well, that would have been a 1/3 230 lips.
So, what was what inspired you to change it,
I,
and what advantage did you see?
I saw it sitting on the table and said, "What if I turn it around?" Period. You know, what if I
Just a
turn it
random
around?
experiment.
Yeah, there were hardly anybody flying swept-back airplanes at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out I don't think I didn't know Hank Cole then, but he'd been doing swept-back airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, well, what if I turn it around? And all of a sudden, the plane just magically flew better. Um,
Any idea what makes it fly better?
well, I imagine that it could be explained that the tip vortexes
Mm-hmm.
act better, and it always seemed that I wanted to put some washout in them. Um, the last 20% of the wing
Okay.
tip, I bend it up, you know, and do that. In fact, uh, I'm not sure. It might have been the first time I've ever built a high ceiling version, the Sweepette 18. Pardon me. Um, we took it to Santa Ana, and it was going pretty good, but I couldn't seem to slow it down. What I considered would be the good slow glide speed, you know. And I threw it and it went into the girders and came out, and each wingtip was cracked in the last little bit, you know. This is a polyhedral
Okay.
Sweepette like like that one. And so I glued them up, and this is pre-cyanoacrylate. So I had, I think I glued it with ambroid,
Mm-hmm.
because I hated Comet and testers. They were useless glue, so they cost me some contests gluing things together with that.
Just wouldn't hold.
Yeah, it wouldn't hold, and I'll show you something else about that. And so I I glued the cracked wingtips back together. It wasn't a bad break, but it just shattered them a little bit.
Right.
Impact on the ground. And when I glued them back together, I noticed that the extra washout had been into each wingtip. So I did a little bit of hang glide, maybe some minor trim adjustments. But I don't think it took more than I don't think it took any more nose weight. Maybe it did. And right away it went up and it recovered better, and it glided slower coming down. And I think that was in I don't know. It could have been 61 or it could have been 65. I've forgotten. Could probably go to my log and find out, you know. But uh, and I immediately did better time, you know. It went up and flipped out, and it was gliding slow from the top, you know. I thought, all right, that's what I'm after. And I hadn't had that much of an occasion to to get that to happen before. So now that was something that I learned. It seemed like that the sweepback needs more washout.
Yeah, there is an aerodynamic reason for that, and it's that swept-back wings, the stall tends to propagate from the tips inward, so you need that washout. I, my experience is I think there's more to it than that, because I vividly remember having a light bulb moment like you did with washout, because I'd heard it talked about.
Uh-huh.
I was fairly isolated in my flying. I didn't have people to fly with.
Sure.
Um,
Neither
and
did I.
and I
Until I met Foster and a couple other guys.
Yeah, well, you were younger,
Some of
because
those guys.
I was 19 the first time I flew with people I had not taught to fly. But I remember cranking in some washout as an experiment, because I had a mini Sweepette that I had drawn up. You probably are familiar with all my shenanigans with that. And I remember it was that plane in particular. I kept having to add nose weight to get it to stop stalling in the glide. And I thought I'd get it right, and then it'd hit a bump on a flight, and it would immediately start oscillating, and it'd do it all the way to the ground. And for some reason, I cranked in some washout into the tips, and all of a sudden the stall went away. And I looked at him like, I feel like it's gliding fast, and so I started taking nose weight off, and I kept taking nose weight off, and kept taking off nose weight, and I was like,
Yeah.
all
Right.
of a sudden this airplane doesn't stall ever. It transitions better, and the sync rate just kept dropping and dropping. I kept
Yeah.
watching the numbers on the stopwatch going higher and higher, and it
Yeah.
wasn't long after that for the first time in my little life, I was getting minute plus flights off of the Catapult, and the light bulb went off. Oh,
Yeah.
that's how these guys do it.
Yeah. That's. I don't know if Joe Foster did it that way. Come to think of it, I don't remember ever talking to him about washout. Um,
Of course, y'all were flying different platforms then, so that may
yeah,
be
they're
part of the
flying
difference.
the Oakland Cloud Duster poly shape planform that they'd started developing in the late 40s. The DeMoss brothers,
Okay.
two brothers who were flyers and they liked hand launch, and I was told by a guy who was more or less the historian of the Cloud Dusters at the time. His name was uh, Chuck Charles. Ah, brain fade. Um, and he said, yeah, they went away and one summer and came back all buff because they'd been construction workers, you know, and immediately they were throwing like 15 feet higher when they flew, and they were doing winning flights, you know, uh, winning the contests back then, and so um, Foster's glider is nothing more than an Oakland Cloud Duster Poly. Um, with a couple of little secret ingredients. He had a longer tail moment arm than most of them, and he had this little bit of positive incidence in the stabilizer, which is very interesting. I honestly don't quite understand it, but because I never needed that with the Sweepettes. Um, but you did need it with a Foster glider, because if you notice in the Zaic yearbook with the Foster glider, and by the way, he was like the most cross-discipline capable flyer,
Yes.
champion, and I don't know what all, you know. If we had the results of the 52 nationals, he became Grand National Champion. 52 nationals at Los Alamitos up the road here, and he won indoor hand launch. He won baby ROG. He flew
There's my class.
outdoor. Well, he flew all sorts of indoor events, microfilms and whatnot, and he flew outdoor gas and speed, I think.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah, he could do it all, and he came back in the he came back to flying free flight later on, and he made a Wakefield that immediately got him on the team. You know, I think it was back in '81.
Wow.
He went to the World Champs in Spain, a terrible, like the worst World Champs ever, and I think he got fifth, and that was kind of because people's planes were downwind and they couldn't get them back in time to fly the next flight. They were a great friend from Australia and New Zealand. He was a Royal Air Force guy, and he was Paul Lagan, his name, and I see that he finished second, you know, so I sent him a note and said, hey, congratulations on finishing second. He says, you know, I don't want congratulations for that. I should have won the damn thing. He says, my planes were downwind until a few minutes to go in the last round, and until one came back and it was all soggy. We had to cut the tissue and suck the water out of the rib bays, glue them back up, and I noticed there was a twist in the wing, so I was twisting it as opposite. He says he towed it up for the last flight with a few minutes to go in the last round, and it went off flying pretty good, but the twist came back in and it spun in. He got 150 some seconds with it spinning in, and yeah, he should have won that, but never mind. That's just the way it goes. The guy who won it did good though, and Tony Vendensek, Croatian, Slovenian, something like that. Anyway, I met him. He's a good guy. But you see the Gold Rush?
Yes.
You know what that is.
Yeah, I've never built one. I've seen the plan for it.
Very odd trim situation. Cowley had some interesting ideas.
He did.
Yeah. I mean, I was there when he set the record. I was helping him. I was either timekeeping or whatnot. And you know, he was a hell of a flyer. I miss him a lot. Yeah. Anyway, had a pop-up wing, and he'd started doing that back in England, and before he left, and he left England in, well, I met him in '79 at the World Champs. Yeah.
Well, Lee, it has been a pleasure
I'm
you
pleased to
letting us
have
in
you
here.
as my guest here today for all of the fun and frivolity and the typical modeler's junky workbench and whatnot.
Still tidier than mine.
Come on, it can't be. Yeah.
Oh, yes, it can.
Oh well, I guess it can. Well, George Morris, I think, takes the cake. He's got a house he lives in, and there's airplane building places all over it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.